Welcome, friends, and thank you for tuning into the Optimal Health Program today. Hope you're all doing well. As you know, today we're going to talk about a variety of topics, take your questions, cover a lot of good ground, maybe some anecdotal stories about this or that. Let's see. Most people today, and the largest segment of the population, has concerns about hormone decline. And they have these vague ideas, of course, and everyone's heard about women going into menopause, losing the ability to have their period, hot flashes, etc. But there's so much more involved when your hormones decrease. In a perfect world, when your hormone levels are in good range, your memory, your focus, your mood, your concentration, your bone stability is very good. For men, testosterone is great for endurance and strength, sexual drive and function, similarly with women. But there's no absolute time when they have to drop, so they can drop at different times in someone's lifetime. Some people will drop in their 30s, others will drop in their 40s or 50s, etc. Some people have significant symptoms, other people don't. So the question is, where are your hormones going? They're going to drop, obviously, but when you should start testing them. So the idea that if we're tracking your vitamins and minerals, and we're looking at your thyroid now and then, your DHEA, and we look at your testosterone, female hormones, IGF-1, we should start looking at those things in the 30s because that's when they start to drop in the majority of people. We'll even test vitamins in the 20s, sometimes in the teens, when kids and certainly young women are having an excessive menstrual flow, and we see that their iron levels are low or their B12 might be low. So we want to look at all of these different areas and make sure that your body's in a good range all the time.
Just real quick, got a question here. Can a guy have low testosterone even if his sex drive is completely normal?
You can have low testosterone with a good sex drive. It's interesting. So people think of hormones as an on and off switch, where you have no hormone or a lot of hormone, but there's so many levels of hormone in between. So some people might have a drop in hormone. They're anxious, they're irritable. They still might have normal sexual function, but over time that worsens. They become more moody. Their muscle response to exercise decreases because you need a decent amount of the testosterone to have your muscles become or to maintain strength and stability. For some people and men, they may lose the hair on their lower legs when testosterone decreases. So there are varying levels that you see the corresponding decrease. In a similar fashion, I've said this many, many times about cholesterol, triglycerides, and sugars in the diet. So a person might have a little bit too much carbohydrate in the diet. You might see the triglycerides rise because that's a quick rise because the sugars binding to fat are triglycerides, but you may not see the cholesterol go up as yet. The more carb you have, the more prolonged time, triglycerides go higher, cholesterol and all the other lipoproteins start to go up. And then, interestingly, when you start to cut the carbs in your diet, your triglycerides drop quick, and then the cholesterol starts to come down. So these things can happen at varying times, and depending upon what your body's doing overall.
And then got this one here. The men are out. If you're tired all the time and have no motivation, how do you know if that's testosterone or just stress and lack of sleep?
Well, it could be a combination of things. Fatigue, as I see it, can be caused by 40 or 50 different things. And you're not going to see low testosterone in a teenager, so that's typically not common. But you might see a virus like Epstein-Barr or cytomegalovirus. As you get older and your hormones decline, well, yeah, you can find low thyroid, DHEA, testosterone, IGF-1, which is the active component of growth hormone. Some people are forcing themselves to be tired by eating a lot of carb, and when the blood sugar goes up, you're dumping extra insulin, your blood sugar drops too low, and that's when you feel anxious, irritable, panicky, or tired. So it can be coming from, different places. Vitamin deficiency, low iron, low B12. B12 is critically important for energy, brain function. It helps to lower homocysteine, which is a cardiac risk factor. So there are many different causes, but some obviously a little bit more specific to age, as opposed to absolutes where things always drop at a certain point. So you have to take all of that into consideration. But the blood tests that we do, the big blood tests, will cover all of that.
Are there actually foods that increase testosterone, or is most of
No.
that stuff online nonsense?
There's no food that increases testosterone, and typically there really are not supplements, vitamins that help you to make more testosterone. There are some people that have tried precursor substances, maybe plant extracts. I don't really see that working much at all. We know that enclomiphene is a capsule prescription that gets your body to make more of your testosterone. So if a person's in the young age, 40 or 50 or so, and they start to see the testosterone decline, we could try the enclomiphene and see if your factories will still make it. If as you get older, you're just not making it, even the enclomiphene, the precursor, is telling your factories to work. It may not work. So you might need either a shot of testosterone or a sublingual pellet or the cream for testosterone. So it's pretty straightforward once you see the blood test. And I know you hear me talk about the blood test all the time, but that's really the hallmark of understanding what your body's doing. Your body is telling us exactly what's going on by looking at your vitamins, minerals, hormones, sometimes autoimmune markers, heavy metals. The list can go on and on. But that's really the doorway, the entrance into understanding your body.
Someone in the chat said that they were told he's a 35-year-old guy and has testosterone level of a 6-year-old. Does that automatically mean something is wrong?
Probably. If you're talking about a 6-year-old, it means the testosterone's sort of not there. So there may be some disruption in the axis or the connection between the brain and your testes and your ability to make the testosterone, because the signals come from your brain to organs to make the hormones, just as it would be with any of the hormones. So there may be some sort of defect there. There are some people that we've seen, interestingly enough, that have a pretty weird exposure of heavy metals, and heavy metals could damage any organ, any tissue, any neurotransmitters, and that may be playing a role. Some people come in, and it's kind of obvious that they're in great muscular shape, sort of a bodybuilder. They come in and saying, I have low testosterone. I said, well, you didn't have low testosterone when you were taking tons of it, when you were injecting yourself to get big as a horse. I don't say that, but, I'm thinking that. So a lot of times early on, they'll burn out their ability to make the testosterone by taking so much of it that their body is thinking, I don't need to make it because so much of it's there showing up in my blood and in my muscles. So those individuals have to be very careful because you don't want to burn out your own function. If you take too much of a hormone, whether it's testosterone, thyroid, DHEA, etc., sometimes you're shutting down your production. You're making less because you're relying on what the body sees in your blood from outside source. So you have to be very careful with that.
Someone on YouTube said, I think that's why The Rock looks like he's melting away right now.
I think people can clearly see who is utilizing things to help them achieve a certain look, whether it's being shredded, or being gigantic and going from, looking average to like superhuman. But there's always a price to pay when you go way overboard. Your blood can become too thick. That's why if we're looking at an individual that really needs the testosterone because their body can't make it anymore, they're in their 50s or 60s, whatever, and we give them a little bit of either the sublingual pellet, the cream, or a shot initially, then switch over to the cream or the pellet, we keep monitoring the levels and make sure they're in good range. We might use the enclomiphene so we can still try to get the body to make its own. But you don't go beyond, what we call normal physiological parameters. You don't go crazy because all you're going to do is create problems. That's why a lot of these gigantic guys have no hair because, they're just not shaving their head because it's cool to shave your head. It's because you're losing it because you're taking too much of the androgens that can wipe out your hair from dihydrotestosterone. So.
Crazy.
Interesting scenario.
What's the difference between total testosterone and free testosterone, and which one actually matters?
Well, total and free are both important, and the idea is that what's available to your body, what's free and unbound, may be more available. So you're looking to see, just like with PSA, there's free percent PSA. If that's very high, that's a good thing. If free percent PSA is very low, that's a bad thing. It might be a higher increased risk for prostate tumor. So the free and unbound part of the picture is important to know as well, because you really want to know what your body has to be as usable. So you take everything into consideration. And, you know, just sort of the very basic comment on the overview of this, we're not just looking at a person and say, hey, let's just look at your testosterone. Or a woman, hey, let's look at your estrogen. We're looking at DHEA in both, full thyroid panels in both, T3, T4, TSH, free T3, free T4, reverse T3, thyroid stimulating hormone, thyroid antibodies, because you might find a person who's tired and achy, who's gained some weight, their skin, their hair, nails have changed, and their thyroid's dropping down. But if you don't test the thyroid antibodies, you wouldn't know that they have a disorder where they're attacking their own antibody production, autoimmune thyroid issues. So you can't just do T4 and TSH, which a lot of doctors do, because you're missing the entire picture. And as well, if you do T4 and TSH, as traditionally doctors might do, what if the T3 is low? You're not going to find that. So you have to do T3, T4, TSH. You have to look at all of these parameters to make sure you're gathering the biggest amount of information. So you could be tired and achy from low thyroid, low DHEA, low testosterone, low IGF-1. It could be any of those. And it's just common sense. If you have a cool old car, which I've always been a fan of, some of the cool old cars back in the 60s, 70s, even earlier, like the old Rolls Royces. A good friend of mine, Tommy, had a shop in Great Neck, and he would restore all these old cars. And I would 2 or 3 times a week go to his shop after work and watch him restore a 1920s Rolls Royce with those big lantern headlights on the big running boards. And he would take the car engine down to the block. And, I just love that whole thing. So in a similar way, we're looking at the entirety of your body and fixing everything we could find that's wrong so that you get your best result. You don't look at one thing and say, okay, let's see what that will do.
Wow.
Also, to make a little added point, for some people, when we correct the hormones, we might do one at a time because I want to see what that one correction does. So for men and women, if we're looking at correcting testosterone, I might give a woman a little pellet under the tongue, 5 milligrams, and over the course of a week or so, watch to see how well she does. Then we may add on DHEA and see what that can help with, or the estrogen, progesterone, or any of those in order. You want to be able to kind of tell which hormone is correcting which symptom. So important to do.
This is a good question. Once a guy starts TRT, is he basically committed to it for the rest of his life?
Well, if a man starts TRT, they're typically not making enough of it or have had some sort of scenario where their production has decreased so much that they need to have more of it. So in certain circumstances, as I've mentioned, you can take enclomiphene if you're young enough to get your body to make more of your own testosterone. In doing so, that might be all you need for a while. But once you get older, you're going to need something because your factories are shutting down. Just like women, there are no women that are 80 or 70 that are still making the estrogen progesterone, or no men or women in the 50s, 60s, et cetera, that make all of the hormones in perfect range. That's when most of them seem to drop. So yes, you could argue that, well, women only need a lot of the hormones when they're in that, childbearing age. Well, essentially that's a true statement, but that's not the full picture because you need some of those hormones to protect your bones going on for your whole life. You need some of them to maintain normal tissue structure and texture and function, lubrication. So hormones are not for one thing. They go to all cells and do lots of things. And when women lose the estrogen progesterone, their memory, their focus, their concentration goes, hot flashes, all of these things. And you don't want to have a woman who has progressive memory and, focal loss or dementia because she hasn't had some hormone for a while. I'm not saying you have to give the same levels that you have in childbearing age, but you give a little bit just to protect the brain. There was a great study here on, where did it go? Medical News Today.
Did it sleep?
Talking about the estrogen progesterone helping with brain function. Let me go back to that.
I was getting nervous that the laptop was going to sleep.
Yeah, no, it kind of was just sitting there for a second, waiting to be used. Estrogen therapy, menopause, linked to reduce Alzheimer's. So there's so much information, but really think about this. When you're a kid and a teenager and a 20, 30-year-old, you have all your hormones, You're in great shape. You're invincible. You can run marathons, do all that stuff. But when your hormones start to drop, I'm sure there are millions of studies that talk about what you lose when those hormones go away. So that's why I want to walk you back 10 or 15 years to bring you to where you were before.
Besides testosterone, what are the other important hormones men should be paying attention to?
Well, certainly DHEA, adrenal hormone, that's important for stress response. Thyroid hormone, of course, because that can decline. We've had some people, kids, as I say, 18, 20 years old that have low thyroid because there's something in their family, potentially genetically, that's a defect in the production of the thyroid hormone. So we look for it. It's very simple to do a thyroid test as an add-on to our, big blood test. And normally we do it anyway, but you might see that. So if you see it, you fix it, and all of a sudden the person's doing that much better. IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1, the active component of growth hormone, very important. So we're looking at a wide range of things in men and women. And then we talk about peptides, because your body should be making lots of peptides. When you're young, you certainly make them. When you get older, you don't. That's why we talk about NAD all the time, because NAD is a wonderful cofactor in 500 different enzyme systems in your body. And when you correct the NAD by doing little sub-Q injections, you're taking the oxygen that you bring into your lungs and converting that into 36 molecules of ATP energy. So it's critically important that every cell has lots and lots of oxygen, and therefore converting it to energy, working in the mitochondria, every part of your body. So critically important to have all of these things at the same time.
Someone said, I keep hearing celebrities and other longevity people talking about NAD and NAD+.
Yeah.
What exactly is it?
Nicotine adenine dinucleotide is a substance that your body makes. And if I had a massive wall chart, which I don't, and I've always toyed with the idea of putting up one of these massive wall charts in the office, but it would boggle people's minds. You could look at them online, like the Krebs cycle, citric acid cycle, some of those chemical pathways in the body where you have this becomes this gets reduced to that, this goes here. It's just a very complicated pathway. But NAD allows so many things to occur. It's sort of a controller, a mediator of cellular function, cellular metabolism. Of course, the most significant thing it might do is help to take oxygen to make energy. It's good for repairing tissues, repairing cells, repairing DNA. And the individuals that use the NAD, and just about everybody I've ever seen where we've corrected that, say, wow, my thought process is fast. I can do numbers in my head where I couldn't normally do that. Or I just really feel focused. I have a very good friend. We had dinner with him the other night, and he's a great golfer. Almost
Fantastic.
Too good. Yeah, almost too good, almost annoyingly too good. But he's tall, 6'5", he can crush the ball. And so we were talking about things, and we're going to start a podcast with him and his families, which is going to be pretty interesting. And he was on vacation. I went to see him and his wife in Italy. That's the people that I stayed with in Forte de Marmi in Tuscany. And he said, I didn't play golf for a month. I was, in Italy. I came back and, everything just started to hit again. I was doing great. And he's probably a 3 handicap or a 4. And then he was telling us that the scores he was making were just ridiculous, really low scores. I said, well, what's changed? What have you done differently? He goes, well, I told you a while ago, it's the NAD because it makes me focus better on my putting. I can focus more on my swing, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's repairing my body's ability to keep that swing in the perfect range. And I'm like, yeah, as long as you don't use it when we play. Because he's really good. I'm nowhere near that ability, but he's got a terrific ability. He hits 345-yard drives. He's just a terrific golfer. But he attributes a lot of his better game now to the NAD.
Someone said, sounds like he's a perfect man to have on the podcast.
Yeah, well, we interviewed him
we
a while
did.
back. Yep, about his prostate cancer charity, Man Cave Health, which we should do that again. He has a great golf outing every June, and that was terrific this year. We had a huge amount of fun. A lot of people played golf. It was packed, and he's done it every year for a bunch of years. and it's a great time, but it's a long day, you know. I'll get up super early, stretch out, go to the course, have a little breakfast, go to the driving range, practice a little bit, and once it's on, it's on. And there's lots of foursomes and all sorts of fun things. And his daughters, you know, help him a lot, his wife as well. And every other hole, there are prizes to win if you raffle and everything else. And so, but yeah, it's a good day. But by the time they're done in the evening, it's like 10 o'clock at night.
You got to ice your feet.
I'm done. Yeah, I'm shot. You know, 5 a.m. till, you know,
Oof.
10 o'clock at night's a bit much.
Can you even absorb NAD if you take it as a pill?
I don't think there's really no NAD as a pill. NMN is a precursor, so utilizing NMN might give you some benefit, but the question is how much are people going to absorb or convert? Some people try it, and it's funny because there are people who want to be on every peptide known to man now.
Yes.
And I say, well, if you want to do that, first read up about the peptide, buy the capsule, so you can try the capsule, see if it helps. If it helps, okay. If you want to do the injectable, that's the best way to take it. You can do that. But remember, there's more cost in the injectable than there is the capsule. So try to see if it works before ordering everything and, you know, running with it. Now, there are 2 ways to get peptides. One way, which we don't recommend, is going online and ordering from these research, quote, facilities, compounding pharmacies, where there's no quality control, there's no sterile room required. It's just not standardized or supervised or overseen or scrutinized. I, as a physician, can only buy from a compounding pharmacy that is absolutely scrutinized, registered, has a sterile room for mixing the vials and such. So I know the potency, I know the benefit, I know the quality of what we're getting from places that are absolutely meeting that standard. These are U.S. companies only. We're not allowed to get from anywhere else. Other companies where people are buying and they'll sell to a person directly are not the place you want to go because there's none of that. And as it turns out, it seems that some of these things are being made in other countries, like in China, which I would never trust. So I would never go online and buy a product directly, even though it's less expensive, is because you don't know what you're getting. They can't tell you exactly how many milligrams or can't tell you exactly what you're getting or that it's absolutely documented and proven to be real.
Right.
So we're going to be coming up with, and I'll announce this as this turns out. I've been speaking about the whole longevity project, which we're talking about, and Frank is heavily involved in. We're going to have another podcast, the Longevity Health Podcast, and we'll talk about research and everything having to do with longevity. We'll talk about peptides and such, and we're creating a mechanism where people could go online, put their blood work in, get that read, and certainly, based upon my recommendations, get vitamin and mineral correction, hormones, peptides. They're going to have different branches of this mechanism in our longevity website so that you can get substances to help with your hair, the GLPs to help with your weight loss, hormones, peptides, all different things, all started through our website as a starting point. There'll be follow-ups, telehealth visits. There will be people that are coaches that can help you walk through the weight loss protocols with the GLPs, what to eat, make sure you have a lot of protein, make sure you exercise. It's going to be really comprehensive. So I've been working on this diligently for months and months and months and months now. It's all coming close to a head to get it started up and running. So in the next couple of weeks, I promise you, you'll hear about this more week to week. It's going to be a relatively easy turnkey process where you go to the website, you can fill out information if you just want to get a hormone. If you want to get a GLP or a peptide, you need to fill out some other information, and then that will be created for you. So you'll be able to do all of this in a way from home. And what I mean is that we're going to track you well through this mechanism with telehealth visits. We're also going to have a device that sends or goes to your home where you put it on your arm, like other companies have done. It warms up your arm. You pop a device on, press a button, it draws your blood, goes into a tube. You take that tube, you mail that back after you put it into a special chamber, and we can get your blood done at home by you, every 3 months or so, depending upon what we're tracking or what we're treating. So it's going to be a terrific way.
The future is here.
Yep.
Don't we love
Sorry.
doctors? I mean, listen, it's one
forgot
thing
to
if
turn
it
my
says
phone off.
beep, beep. It's beautiful. We don't
I
mind.
forgot to turn the phone off. And who knows, everybody's going to call. So, yeah, that's going to be an amazing way to get what we're doing at home with great follow-up, connection, telehealth visits, actually speaking with a physician,
It's huge.
speaking with coaches, so people anywhere in the country can get a large part of what I'm doing and have always done. Of course, we can't do IVs over the phone inside short stem cell, but we're able to do all the great workup and these things for you, no matter where you are. So it's happening.
Huge. Someone said people talk about NAD like it can slow down aging. Are we anywhere close to proving that in humans?
So I think the reality is that if you look at lots of people, like I've done in 40 years, people are going to have a rate of decline, a rate of aging. For some people that smoke and drink too much, you've seen this, they just look horrible over time. Whether it's their skin, whether it's the hair, whether it's they've gained weight, they're sluggish, their brain function's not good. And that's sort of putting a chemical or chemicals into your body to cause that damage. So that's sort of an accelerated description of one type of aging. But aging also has everything to do with decline in cells in your body. So your pancreas can get tired over time. So can your heart, your lungs, your liver, your kidneys, your brain. And when you have less cells, you have less neurotransmitters made by your brain, less insulin made by your pancreas, etc. So you have this decline that occurs. If, however, you're eating right, doing lots of exercise, flooding your cells with oxygen, we're getting vitamins and minerals on board, and you're keeping your nutrients and hormones on board, your body will maintain that function and ability that you had at a younger age. So this is an anti-aging mechanism. I'm not going to say that people are not going to look a little bit older. You do look a little bit older, but you'll have amazing function. Because NAD works, at the mitochondrial level, at the cellular level, because it works to help to repair DNA, it has great anti-aging characteristics and benefits. And for the people who lose that focus, concentration, that have some brain fog, etc., when you bring that on board, and now you're regaining those functions you had when you were making your own NAD, of course, you're maintaining a good function in your body, which has anti-aging effects. So, yes, in a matter of, a bunch of different words and maybe taking the long route to describe it, correcting vitamins, minerals, hormones, and peptides have anti-aging benefit. Absolutely.
Someone mentioned some addiction treatment centers use NAD infusions. Do you know what the thinking is behind that?
Yeah, because you're giving the brain a wonderful product to be able to get more oxygen to your cells and to get those cells to work better. You're also repairing cells. As I mentioned, repairs DNA. And your brain cells need the oxygen and need that mitochondrial benefit, so absolutely. Just like there's an old, in medical school you learn about something called Wernicke's encephalopathy, and people that drink a lot, their brain is so affected by the drinking because you're wiping out all of your vitamins and minerals, and such a decrease in your vitamins and minerals causes your brain to get wonky. It's a medical term, wonky. And for those individuals, you start to give them vitamin IVs, and all of a sudden their brain's doing better because you're loading up all of the B vitamins that they haven't had in a long time. So you're wiping out all the good vitamins and minerals and damaging your NAD and damaging your hormone production by drinking that much. And if you put all of these things back on board, you can get repair and improvement in your function.
Does exercise increase NAD naturally?
I don't think there's a study that shows that exercise increases NAD, but exercise, remember, is the king of all delivery. exercise is the UPS, FedEx, and whatever other delivery, DHL, are they still around?
Oh yeah.
Delivery companies in the world. And if you have great vitamins and they're sitting in your stomach and you're not getting them to every cell of your body, you're not getting the best end result. If you have great hormones that your body's making and they're not delivered, you're not getting the result. If you have a wonderful plant you just put in the ground and it's not enough rain and there's no nutrients in the soil, et cetera, plant's not going to grow. So the exercise is just flooding your cells with oxygen, vitamins, minerals, hormones, peptides, all of those wonderful things that you need so all your cells can benefit from them.
Just a side note on your DHL comment. You know, you always want to use DHL if you want a nice surprise because the package will come and you won't just say, "What is this package?" because you ordered it a year ago. And it'll be a nice surprise, you know?
Ordered it a year ago. I'm a little wary on delivery of things. We buy lots of things from different companies, obviously. Injectables for vitamin IVs, all of that, stem cell kits. And sometimes, and we tell the delivery companies, you know, we're here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, not Monday, not Friday. But invariably they deliver on a Friday. No one there. Well, yeah, you know, we've told you we're not there on a Friday. So sometimes you have to repeat the discussions so they don't deliver on the Friday. Because you never know when it's going to come back to redeliver.
The worst. Read the notes, pal. Do we actually know what an optimal NAD level is for a human being, or does it vary?
There's no real blood test, but I think that when you look at individuals and we start them off with NAD and we give them an injection, which is 0.05 on a tiny little insulin syringe, that when they start to say, hey, my brain function is better, I'm a little more focused, a little sharper. And then they do that every other day initially, then go to every day, and they're maintaining that benefit. And then we'll bring it up a little bit, go to 0.07 or 0.1 on the syringe, which lots of people like to stay at, and they have a variety of different benefits. Then we know they're in the right zone. For some people that have gone higher, they may see more benefit. Other people don't. But we try to gauge that by how well they do with the dose.
Up to date, up to speed on NAD. Oh, one other thing. Someone said, this might sound crazy, but if NAD helps cells survive and produce energy, could boosting it theoretically help cancer cells too?
The question is that if you're putting oxygen into good cells, will that affect or make cancer cells exist? Actually, no. It's sort of the opposite. Cancer cells use a lot of glucose to grow faster. That's Otto Warburg's Nobel Prize-winning research back in the 1930s. So sugar is really bad because it makes cancer cells grow faster. When you talk about oxygen and energy, the individuals that have better oxygenation don't have any progression of cancer. There are even doctors who use hyperbaric oxygen therapy on cancer patients to flood so much oxygen into the picture that the cancer cells become disrupted. So that's been ongoing for many, many years. So there's nothing like glucose to make cancer cells grow because that's what they use as their fuel or their energy. And that's genius research from a German doctor, Otto Warburg, back in the 1930s in Germany.
Crazy.
An unusual story. You know, he was one of the people that, the crazy dictator with the funny mustache,
Oh, that guy, yeah.
allowed to survive. And there's no reason to use the guy's name because there's no reason to ever speak nicely about somebody, but he allowed him to survive and do research, and that's where he was able to have his own facility and to prove this. I mean, it's one of the greatest discoveries in the history of the world that Otto Warburg found that glucose is a primary fuel for cancer. So a lot of the combined therapies for cancer, which could be a variety of different things, they use a low-carb diet, a ketogenic diet, to starve the cancer so it doesn't have enough fuel to grow. And he also In another really brilliant way, doctors have realized if you give people a little bit of insulin and your blood sugar drops, all the cancer cells and receptors open to suck up whatever sugar they can get. This was proven in the same time. So that doctors can use glucose along with certain meds and inject that, flood the glucose behind it, a big syringe of D50, which is like pure sugar water, and then all that gets sucked up at the cancer cell, but now you just sucked up the drug. So it's called insulin potentiation therapy, which helps kill cancer. And Dr. Forsyth, rest his soul, in Reno, Nevada, was one of the pioneers and the best doctors in the world to use that therapy to kill cancer. And people didn't get much of a side effect because the dose of chemo was so small that you got great results and no bad side effects. And he had thousands of patients still on record, over 2,000, maybe 3,000 at this point, that were treated and the cancer is gone for very long times, even lifetime, because of that program, the protocol. So
that was wild. What a history lesson we got.
Yeah, amazing.
Just one more question on NAD I see was, I keep seeing NAD nasal sprays now. Is there any evidence those actually work?
It's hard to say. Delivery to the human body, 100% delivery is an injection. Sub-Q, IV, intramuscular, because it's there. If you're taking something orally, your digestive enzymes could break down that substance, so you don't know how much digestion you're actually and absorption you're getting. If it's a nasal spray, you theoretically might be getting some of that molecule into the blood vessels in your nose, but what's the size of the molecule, and how do we prove that that's actually getting in? Sublingual, there are a lot of blood vessels under your tongue, and doctors over years have recommended sublingual use, and some people in nutritionally oriented individuals like sublingual vitamins, but sometimes it's hard to say if you're getting enough. So the jury's not done with that yet. It would be nice if it showed some positive benefit, but the information is not there yet.
How exactly do NAD levels drop as we get older? I may have missed this part.
Yeah, everything drops as we get older, no pun intended. I'm very careful when I say that. I'm sure there are different listeners in the population not happy about their droppage over time. So usually in your late teens and 20s, your hormones are still in great range. Your neurotransmitters, all the peptides are in good range. I think part of the discussion has to be a wear and tear phenomenon where if you're, like I've said this a billion times, if you're eating lots of carbs, you're using a lot of insulin to lower the sugar, your pancreas gets tired because it's overworked. Instead of having, a little bit of carb with your meals, you're having lots of carb or drinking lots of alcohol, and your pancreas gets tired, and then you just can't make the hormone as much anymore, and that's when your sugars stay high, and people become hyperglycemic and then potentially diabetic. It's the same sort of mechanism. People that are under a lot of stress are using a lot of DHEA because of that stress, and your body's trying to blanket the stress with DHEA, the adrenal hormone, and after a while your body just can't make it anymore. There are outside influence, like heavy metal exposure can damage your production of neurotransmitters. That's why we see people with MS, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's disease correlate with aluminum and heavy metals. So outside things can damage your production. So it's not as though there's one thing that says at this age you have to have this amount of loss. We see a smattering of it throughout the population. So typically the loss of hormones, and I think the loss of NAD and some of the peptides, probably starts to occur in the 30s or 40s. People say, I hit the wall. I don't have the energy anymore. I work out like a dog and I can't get through it. So you start to get them back on, and we've done this. Just the NAD injections, they say, yeah, I'm good, I'm focused, I can do the workout, I want to work out more, my brain is totally on board. And that's why we might do the NAD first. And if their testosterone's low, and sometimes we do the testosterone first, as we get the testosterone up, they say, yeah, my muscles feel really good from the exercise. My muscles feel great. I have more strength. I'm getting a little bigger. I'm getting leaner. So we're tracking everything that each of these recommendations will do. For IGF-1, people say, wow, my endurance is crazy. I went for a 10-mile bike ride the other day. I was only doing a mile before. So that enhances your muscular strength, ability, stamina. So there are different benefits of each of these individual things. Some of them will overlap in their benefits, but you want to be able to watch and show and prove, how much benefit they're getting.
Got a question here. Doctor, if I feel tired and just generally off, what blood test would you actually start with?
Well, CBC is a blood test looking at your blood count. If you're anemic, it'll give us a decent view of your red blood cells, hemoglobin, hematocrit. We would look at iron, especially for women, because women, lose blood every month, and that could be a big drop in iron or their blood count. I would look at thyroid hormones, of course, because they help to control your metabolic ability. I would look at DHEA. I would look at testosterone in men and women, IGF-1. I would try to track blood sugar. And what we're doing now, which is pretty cool, they're not terribly expensive. You can go buy that little glucose monitoring device and pop it on your arm. I think you can get the device for about $50 or $60. Pop it on your arm and connect it to your phone, or even buy the reader that you put over it, and see what your blood sugars are doing. And we found a lot of people who didn't realize that they're significantly hypoglycemic because either they're not doing enough exercise, or they're eating too much carb, or eating carb and sitting around. And then if there are diabetics in their family, those people can be hypoglycemic, then become diabetic because of producing too much insulin. Blood sugar drops, hypoglycemia. After a while, the insulin levels drop, diabetes. So we would look at all of these things. Vitamin, mineral levels, of course, B12, D, all of these things. You want to look at the entire picture. Viruses, of course.
Right. Can regular blood work look completely normal while you're still deficient in certain vitamins?
You can have the typical CBC and chemistry that most doctors do look completely normal. And you still could have low B vitamins, low C, A, D, etc. So the vitamin blood test is one of the most important things that you could do, because it's unique, because, vitamins are food for your cells. They're critically important.
Someone just wants to know, what about B12? Can you technically be in the normal range and still be too low for you personally?
Yes. So how can I put this? You want to tailor the vitamins to your need. So there's a range for every vitamin. And let's say, for sake of discussion, vitamin D, the range is 30 to 100 on every lab. If you're 31, 32, you look like you're in a good range, but you're not. You want to be close to 80 or 90. As close to 100 as possible, because that's where you get all the anti-cancer benefit, the bone benefit, the immune response benefit. So it's all about where you are in the range. So I try to get people into the highest level of the normal range, because that's typically where they get their best result. And most doctors never test for vitamins, so they're missing out on a very common mechanism of dysfunction in your body when they're not looking to see if your body's getting all the nutrients you need. And that's why we do custom vitamin recommendations. It's taken a long time to find a company that will do what we want. And past few years, we've been doing this, where we look at your blood test. I check off the different vitamins I want put into a little blister pack in the morning, a blister pack in the evening. It's based directly on your blood test, so that when you get the vitamin pack, you're getting a big box with a roll of the vitamins in blister packs. You take your morning vitamins in the morning with your breakfast. You take your dinner or evening vitamins with dinner. You go out to dinner, you take them with you. And we, within a month, recheck to make sure those deficiencies are perfect. And they are, because we're creating this mechanism that doesn't exist otherwise. You don't have to go out and buy 12, 15 different bottles of vitamins sitting in your cupboard or wherever and go through all that, because we do that for you based on your blood test. So I can't say the based on your blood test comment enough. So there's also someone famous who I met where we're going to correct a few of these things, vitamins and peptides. I'll hold it there for a little while. European famous. Love.
I think they know. I think a few
Maybe.
know. The real
Maybe.
ones. The real ones know.
Yeah. The real true followers will know.
When the lab says something is normal, I always wonder, does that mean it's optimal?
No. Great question. I don't know who asked that question, but that's a great, great question. I can go off on this for hours. Optimal is the best level of that nutrient to create result. Like I mentioned a moment ago with D, if your levels on the lab are expected to be between 30 and 100, any doctor might see 32, 35, 40 and say, oh, yeah, that's good, you're fine. When you look at literature and research and say your best results with D are when they're in the 80 to 100 range for immune response, anti-cancer benefit, bone building effect, you're not getting that at 32, 35. So you want those nutrients to be in the best range possible. If your testosterone level for women is supposed to be around 40 to 50, and you're 35 or 40, you're probably getting some good benefit at 40. But the women who work out, who are using it to work out, which helps to burn fat, it's good for their muscles, good for sexual drive, mood, energy, you're not going to get that at 35. So you want to be between 40 and 50, maybe closer to 50. For men, you need to be at 700, 800. If you're under that 700 range, your workout, your mood, all those things, sexual function, are not going to be great. But if you put that into the right range, you'll get your best result. It's all about being in the right range for your vitamins, minerals, and hormones. Great question.
Amen. Do medications commonly affect vitamin or hormone levels without people realizing it?
Some might. You're told not to have grapefruit when you take certain medications because it may inhibit them.
Grapefruit?
Yeah, grapefruit. Antibiotics, certain blood pressure pills. I don't have the list memorized, but you can look up what medication should I not take if I'm eating grapefruit.
How quickly should you retest after starting a vitamin supplement or changing your diet?
Usually we do it within the month. I think that once you start taking the vitamins that we recommend specifically for you, custom for you, you'll start to see the results within the week. But I'd rather let that get going and brewing, and I'd rather have lots of those nutrients on board so you might feel, yes, my memory is better, my recall is better, my thought process, my mood is better. And it may take a little more of that before we can see homocysteine come down from B6, B12, and folate. So not only do I want the patient to tell me how they feel, I want to be able to have enough time to watch other parameters correct, like their vitamin levels or their homocysteine, C-reactive protein, etc. Iron coming up if iron's low. So we give it a little bit of time, 3 to 4 weeks. It's probably the best range to do that.
Okay. If you could pick 5 blood tests that give you the best overall snapshot of someone's health, which would you choose?
Well, the basic CBC and chemistry are always good because it tells you about your organ function, anemia, blood count, etc. Infection, because you're looking at some of the white blood cells, allergy, you're looking at eosinophils, monocytes, viruses. So it gives you the basics. It doesn't say the monocytes are high because of Epstein-Barr. The Epstein-Barr blood test will say it's definitely Epstein-Barr. So CBC and chemistry are good. Vitamin panel is probably the most important because vitamin deficiency causes problems and wreaks havoc all over the place. In 40 years of doing this, I've yet to see people come in with great levels of vitamin D. Because they say, oh, vitamin D, sun. I go out in the sun in the winter. I'm like, no, you don't. Your face and your hands are not enough skin to convert D. And even those people that I see that are really tan, that, are in vacation or throughout the summer, have a good tan, their D levels may not get past 40 or 50. So the blood test has to, determine or prove that. So thyroid's really important. Hormone panel, estrogen, progesterone, FSH, LH for women, testosterone for men, testosterone for women, those are all important. So there's a good cluster of things that really can give us an idea as to what your metabolic function is like and what your body's doing. So that's always part of our first panel. Our first panel is like 25 pages. We look at heavy metals. We look at the entire gamut.
Can you actually take too much vitamin D or B12 because you're trying to fix a deficiency?
It's hard for people to do that. No one's going to take a bottle worth. But some people might take too much. So are there people that think that 5,000 of vitamin D international units is too much? Some. And they may take a lesser amount and not be able to raise their levels enough, so we might push them to 5,000 and track them, recheck them. There are some people that say, oh, 5,000 is good, I'll take 10,000, which sometimes is too much. If you go way too high in vitamin D, then you might see your calcium increase in your blood test, so you'd have to back that down. So it's very, very rare. I don't see people who are taking big doses of individual vitamins. Sometimes I see people taking 30 bottles worth of stuff a day when they don't need that. Pycnogenol and this and that and milk this. They're just all over the place because they hear something about every vitamin, some sort of sales pitch, or in a vitamin shop, and all of a sudden they're taking tons of stuff that they don't really need.
Doc, I get my yearly physical, and they always tell me my blood work is fine, but what are they actually testing for in that standard panel? Usually
CBC, chemistry. Maybe if you're a woman, they'll do, an anemia or an iron panel. They might do thyroid. They'll never do vitamins. If it's a routine physical, that might be all they do. I mean, if you had questions of autoimmune disorders, rashes, or joint issues, they would look at, the autoimmune panels, arthritis panel, looking for rheumatoid, Sjogren, but those aren't routine tests. So a lot of the routine tests are not really showing you much. You could have issues, and you could have rheumatoid arthritis and have aches and pains in your joints, but you're active and you run around, you're a knock-around guy or girl, you play, you work out, and you have aches and pains, but you don't realize that it's not as much as from your workout, that it could be from an autoimmune mechanism where your body's attacking your own joints. So an arthritis panel looks at all of those markers of inflammation and rheumatoid, etc. So sometimes that test is a good idea when you have unexplained weird aches and pains, not from physical activity or exercise or injury. So, when a doctor listens, it's a really big word. If and when a doctor listens to exactly what you're saying, some do, some don't. Some will sit there and automatically say, oh yeah, CBC, chemistry, whatever. But they're not really hearing what you're saying, so they don't know how to order other tests. I like to listen to everything that a person says and ask them questions around that and figure the picture out and order the tests that are most specific to what they're describing to me and what the physical exam shows. So that leads us to gathering more information, and we end up with a lot more information. So, we have to, extract is probably a harsh term, like extracting a bad tooth. We have to engage with the patient and absorb the information that they're trying to express so we understand what they're going through. And from that information, be able to create an evaluation that shows us where the issues are. I'm a big fan of doing an extra blood test. So many years ago, I saw a patient and patient's daughter, and the patient was probably in his 40s, and this is when the first free % PSA blood tests were being offered as an add-on to the regular PSA. Now, your PSA is supposed to be under 4. If it's above 4, there's more risk of prostate tumor. The free % PSA, if it's very high, that really lowers the risk of prostate tumor dramatically. If it's very low, it increases the risk. And I've told this story a million times because there's a really important purpose to it. So I did the free % PSA, added that on. When the blood test came back, the free % PSA was low, it was 2. It's supposed to be 20 or greater. And his free %, his regular PSA was under 4. I'm like, that's really weird. It's got a low free %, and the regular is okay. So you know what? Let me just double check this. Let's get a sonogram. Got a sonogram, questionable sonogram results, sent him to a urologist. The urologist said, We looked at this. We found an area that we thought was suspicious. We did a biopsy. We found prostate cancer. It was really weird to me because the PSA was not 20 or 30 or 40, but the free percent was really low, and the regular was under 4. So they wanted to do, and they chose to remove the prostate. And at the same time, doing a chest x-ray in preparation for the prostate procedure, they found a lung tumor. And he had lung cancer and prostate cancer at the same time, which is rare. But that's what they found because I did the extra PSA to find the prostate tumor. If I didn't do the extra PSA, the regular PSA would have been fine. He might not have lived more than a few months because of the lung tumor.
Unbelievable.
Non-smoker, bizarre as can be. And I'm sitting there looking at this, and I called the urologist and I called the radiologist, and I said, look, this is rare, but sometimes how it happens. They did the prostate surgery, lung surgery, did fine. And many, many years later, probably 30 years later, daughter moved away and she came back. I was saying, hey, how's your dad? He goes, oh, my dad just passed away. I'm like, sorry to hear that. I said, what happened? He goes, oh, he had a heart attack. His diet wasn't great. She says, don't be sad. You gave my dad 30 some odd years with us because you found the prostate tumor. They removed that. They found a lung tumor and removed it, which he wouldn't have lasted 3 or 4 months. So in my mind, I always think about, let me get the extra test. Let me just look at this. Let me look at that, because it's really pertinent to being able to understand what's happening. So the guy lived 30 some odd years more because we figured that out.
Unbelievable.
Something I'll never forget. Wow. Never forget the patient's face, never forget the daughter's face, but that's what doctors should be doing. Do the extra test. Who cares what it costs? There's no extra cost, do it.
Well, that's a perfect outro for you.
Yeah.
We got our questions in.
Okay, awesome.
That was incredible. I've never heard that story.
Yeah, it's a good story. A couple of other comments on meds. Does fructose contribute to the spread of ovarian cancer? Quick comment on that. This is on our... Why is it not clicking?
Not a touchscreen.
Oh, that's why. So the question is, fructose, another sugar molecule. Of course, sugar's bad, makes cancer grow. They're looking at fructose as being a contributor to the growth and the speed of cancer. So just as I mentioned before about Otto Warburg, another great article. Drinking coffee linked to lower breast cancer risk. Why is this not working the way that I like? There we go. And that's why, or here's why. In 2024, 694,000 women died from breast cancer around the world. And research talks about specific nutrients that help lower breast cancer risk. A lot of the B vitamins, B12, vitamin C, vitamin D. And now they're talking about coffee decreasing the risk of metastasis and decreasing the risk of progression of the cancer because of the polyphenols decrease breast cancer risk. So for those of you who like coffee or like the polyphenols, keep them on board. Okay, so we've got through a lot of questions, a lot of good information. Look forward to hearing from you again and chatting with you and popping up on your computer. I promise I'll wear some cool outfits. So it'll be nice and colorful.
That's my favorite.
God bless you all. What's that? What's your favorite?
That's my favorite outfit. That's my favorite jacket right there.
Yeah, blue. Blue's nice. I like
Pops.
blues. I got a couple of blues. I got a green one for St. Patrick's Day, but that's a long time away. But the blues and the browns and the grays and the blacks, yeah, I like different colors. The office, Garden City, 516-794-0404. Give us a call. We'd love to chat with you. We have a new phone system, which some people are surprised at, but the old phone system we had, which was brought over with the regular phones that we have in the East Meadow office years ago, over 10 years ago, that system crapped out and wasn't really answering machine messages as it should. So we have a new cloud-based system where anytime you call the office 24/7, you got a live person picking up the call. If it's during office hours, we transfer you directly to our second phone line, 516-794-0405. You can speak to the vitamin company. Everything is tracked, so every call is monitored, and an email of that call is sent to my email. A text of that call is sent to my phone, so we can look to see what people need and with what urgency. So it's a great way to be able to keep track of everybody's needs. So that's working out really well. The web is drcalapai.com, drcalapai.com. And soon we're going to announce the longevity website and your ability to get to see how that's going to work for people that want telehealth and people that want peptides and hormones, etc., that don't have the ability to get to the office. So God bless you all. Have an amazing day. You follow us, like us, subscribe, whatever you're supposed to do. We'd like to really do that on YouTube, on Rumble, Instagram. We appreciate all of that. And, you could also get on the website and just text us. We get a lot of nice texts from people that enjoy what we're doing. So we're going to do more of it. Are we able to say that it is possible we may have more shows coming during the week?
Yeah.
We're working on this diligently. Frankie's working on this diligently to see if we can get a Monday to Friday show at 6 o'clock. 5 days a week.
Let's go.
Yeehaw. Okay, God bless you all. Be well. Give us a text or a call. We'd love to hear from you. Bye-bye now.